It's awesome to have you on. And Mike Kicia, did I say that right? Your
Yeah,
last name?
nice job.
Cool.
Usually
Hell yeah, I win.
Usually it's only Dominican baseball players that can say it right.
Well, man, just a little background. Like Mike is head coach at Acumen Performance in. Are you guys in Calgary?
We're in Edmonton at the hub, but then we have a location in Calgary as well.
Okay. So Canada, they work with I would say pretty much majority of the Canadian professional rodeo athletes, along with a lot of other teams, sports. And man, we're excited to have you on this morning to pick your brain about, man, all the things, strength and conditioning and whatever else comes up.
For sure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, dude. Man, give us a little background on yourself and how you got into this position that you're in now, the getting into coaching. Why did you want to become a coach? What led you to this road?
Well, I played college baseball. So I played in Canada for about 3 years, and then I transferred to the University of Mount Olive in North Carolina. So it's a NCAA Division II school. Actually doing really well this year. But played there, and then kind of came to the realization that I was much better in the weight room than I was on the field. So kind of tried to stick with that. So I ended up taking a paid internship basically with the Florida Marlins. So I started with them. I graduated in 2008 and I was in spring training of 2009. And then spent 2 years with them, and then was lucky enough to get a full-time position with the New York Yankees. Spent 2 more years in Charleston, South Carolina as the minor league strength and conditioning coach there. And then was promoted to strength and conditioning coordinator. So then we moved down to Tampa, Florida. We spent, I think, better parts of about 7 years down there. Last 4 years kind of focused more on the rehab side of things. So kind of transitioned to more like a rehab strength and conditioning role. And then kind of same situation you're in right now. Doug had a couple kids, and my wife's from Texas. So it was kind of one of those decisions where strength and conditioning in baseball, you're working 6 days a week. Usually you're working 7 days a week, depending on who's hurt. So it was just not totally conducive for the family life. So we kind of made the decision to be near family. So we ended up moving back up here in the winter of 2019. So kind of right before the world stopped for a little while. Yeah. So about 6 months of just hanging out at the house and trying to find work. And so that was a lot of fun. Got to do the better part of raising my son. So it was good. Spent some time at home. Yeah. And then I kind of linked up with Leanne after that. I was kind of looking for work. I was going to actually start my own gig inside of Evolve Fitness. It's a big chain place here. And she kind of got my resume and said, okay, well, we'll bring you in for a conversation. And then kind of started with them in probably June, I would say, of 2020. And then like getting into the whole rodeo thing, like I'm not a rodeo guy at all. Like I'm from Edmonton. We have a million people here, definitely a city kid. But I know Leanne had been working with some rodeo guys for probably about 2-3 years, I think, at that point. And then kind of she just started transitioning some guys over to me, and kind of the rest is kind of history. There's a lot more to it than that, but kind of that's kind of the journey so far. So
man, that's badass. That is so cool. I love that. So after baseball, well, you went to college. What'd you major in?
Exercise science.
Okay. So did you get your CSCS after college or in college?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right after college. So I basically, once I graduated, I studied for a couple months, took the test, and I think I was certified in January, I believe, of what year is that now? 2009.
2009. So
yeah, long time.
That's quite a while. Yeah, quite a while.
Yeah, eventually, I got one star on my name, and I think eventually you get something cool if you do it for 20 years. So,
hell yeah, you do. That's awesome.
And I guess you just pay into that company how many times a year, and they end up giving you like a certificate
right?
after 20 years. Here you go.
We're in the same boat.
Thanks for giving us 20 grand.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Come to the conference so you can get your CEUs.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
pay us $10,000. You bet. We'll
Yeah.
be there. We'll be there.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into all of this because you have a lot of experience with actual professional sports teams, and it's something that we talk about all the time. Is just the culture of rodeo compared to the culture of those other professional sports.
Yeah.
We're just way behind in the sport of rodeo, right? And
100%.
man, I would say right when you moved there and got in with Leanne and started all this, like that was really the peak or like the start of we're changing that culture, right? And we were doing this down here. I had just started this business. And I know, my brother was training with Leanne then, and I think he was like one of her first clients, maybe
I
that
think
she
so.
worked
You
with.
might have been the first.
Yeah. So, and she got linked up with them because of Paige, and Paige was an Olympic figure skater, Richmond's wife, and they're best friends. So it was just like a good fit for them. But here we are now, and things are changing in a great way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you kind of just what are the main differences that you see in the cultures of that professional baseball to rodeo, and maybe like even how it's evolving since you started?
This episode is brought to you by Beastmaster Pro Rodeo. Rodeo season is right around the corner, and it's time for you guys to gear up with the best. We're proud to partner with Beastmaster Pro Rodeo, the go-to source for top quality gear that keeps you riding strong and performing at your best in the arena. Beastmaster isn't just about the essentials. They're constantly innovating. This season, they're rolling out brand new products designed to help you push the limits and take your performance to the next level. And as a Champion Living listener, you get an exclusive hookup. Use our discount code Champion Living, all one word, caps lock on. It's going to save you 10% at checkout on your entire order. So whether you're a professional or just getting started, Beastmaster has the gear you need to tackle the season ahead. Head over to beastmasterrodeo.com to gear up with the best for this upcoming season.
I think definitely, I would say recovery is probably the biggest one to begin with. Where in baseball, yes, you play every day, pretty much, right? Like minor league seasons, 142 games, major league seasons, 162 games. Then you add spring training on top of that, and you could be playing over 200 games a year. So there's a lot of recovery aspects to that guys kind of do on a daily, weekly basis that are just kind of built into their programs, just for a guy to get up and start every 5 days, right? Like they have a routine, they have their list basically scheduled between starts. They've got their tissue work. They have all these things that are kind of built into it. That's just part of the culture. And I would say even baseball's behind other sports like soccer or football, right? Like it's just
Do you
because
think like that's the pinnacle of what, like the strength and conditioning, the recovery, all of that they take? Do you think that's the one sport that does the best at administering those types of
I
protocols?
would say football does the best.
Okay.
Just because the amount of cash, to be honest, the amount of money that's put in. Because none of this shit's cheap, right? So like I think that's the pinnacle, and honestly probably the pinnacle might be at the college level, not even at the NFL level, just because of how much money that gets pushed into it. Because you go online and look at some of these facilities, and you're like, holy shit! Like they just dropped $75 million into a facility, and you're like, okay, well, but yeah, I think that was the biggest difference is when I first started with rodeo guys is like they had just no concept of recovery or the need for it. Like I know when we first started working with a couple guys up here, and it was like, all right, so what do you typically do in your day off? Oh, I go for a 30-minute run uphill.
Yeah.
Uphill.
Or I go do a CrossFit workout. I'm like, okay, so you've literally just dug yourself a deeper hole.
Yes.
So trying to change that mindset of, okay, we actually like your best work today is nothing. Like legitimately don't do anything today because this may be your one day off between getting on for the next 4 days. And like the best thing you can do is maybe move around and drink lots of water and eat food. Like and it was definitely like a hard concept to push forth to some guys. Cause it's rodeo mindsets just go hard all the time. And if I'm not, I was talking, I can't remember who it was, but one of the bareback guys who was just like, he would go run and it was minus 35 outside because he knew nobody else was doing it. Right. Like, and that's just the mindset of it. Right. Where it's,
oh, dude, that's it. And it's to a fault almost.
It's 100% to a fault. Right. Like learning. And that's probably been hopefully the biggest shift that we're trying to implement is just learn how to recover and learn how to warm up. Like everything else, I think if you can get those two things better than they were, everything else will kind of fall in place. Because then I think the lifting stuff makes a little bit more sense because they're not completely blasted after a workout and feel like shit getting on, right? Like I tell them, like, if you feel worse getting on, then I haven't done my job, right? I'm actually doing you a disservice. So I had a good mentor, Matt Krause. He was the head guy for the Reds and the Yankees for a long time. And he said, your job is to make sure that they're there at 7:00 because Anthem's at 7. If they're not there at 7:00, you're not doing your job. So, and there's going to be an Anthem at 7:00 every single day. And your job is just to make sure they're there. And you better feel good, as good as they can playing that many games.
It's so baseball is similar in the sense of the travel schedule, the volume of competition. You know, there's a lot of things that are quote unquote uncontrollables when you're on the road and doing those things. I think baseball probably does and has the resources to do a lot better of a job at managing those uncontrollables than rodeo athletes, right?
Right.
But we are seeing guys start to implement that in their routine on the road. And Caleb Bennett was the first client that I had that really took this information. And don't get me wrong, he fought me on it hard for the first year. You know, it was it's same stuff. Like they're just training themselves to go hard all the time, and it was killing him essentially, his career at least. And when we got him to slow down and focus on the warming up and the recovery, and all of a sudden we start hammering on recovery, well, sleep comes up, food comes up, all these things that quote unquote can't control, but actually you can control if you put enough effort into it. And he realized that instead of flying everywhere and staying in these hotels where he wasn't comfortable, he's like, I'm gonna get my camper, I'm gonna get my bed, I'm putting the same like memory foam on the mattress that I have at home, I am putting the same sheets on there, I'm blacking it out, I'm getting it cold, I'm making a quote unquote sleep environment. And that's what we were talking about, because he'd get to this point of the season, August, September, where they are at the peak of their season, they're getting on 5-6 times a week, and the guy's out there trying to do insanity because he thinks that it's going to make him better and give him a leg up. And I'm like, bro, if you would just shut up and go in that camper and sleep for 8 hours and eat some food, we'd be doing so much better. Well, about year 3, he started being like, okay, I believe you. And so we started really, and then his career, it turned around, man. I think that he got a lot of years out of his career by adjusting what he was doing and really paying attention to that recovery. So it's such a huge transition.
I've seen a lot of similarities, not so much at the major league level because there's so much money that's put into that, and you're staying out of 4 seasons every night, so things are good, right? So, but at the minor league level, there is a huge similarity, because I mean, when I worked in both Greensboro, North Carolina, and Charleston, South Carolina, like our league was from New Jersey to Georgia, right? And we drove everywhere. So there'd be some trips where like you'd finish the game and you're getting on the bus for 16 hours and then you're getting up and dude's got to play the next day, right? So there's a lot of similarities there, especially when you're talking about like nutrition and food. Like sometimes your 2 best options are a gas station and a Waffle House, right? So like it's a matter of kind of being like, okay, what can we actually get from there that's not going to make me feel completely like shit? And what's your favorite thing at Waffle House? Because you better get used to it, right? So like
that's
and
it,
especially man. When I first started, I mean 2009, 10, 11, like there was not a lot of money put into the minor leagues, especially on nutrition. Like it got a lot better in the 10 years I was with it, where we actually had like registered dietitians at the major league level. We had 2 registered dietitians at the minor league level, being able to facilitate post-game meals and stuff like that. But like shit, when I first started, it was like PB&Js and cold cuts. And if you didn't get there in time, usually like if you're the last one out from BP, there may not be anything left for you because there was only so much that the clubbies would put out. So it was definitely a struggle from that side, but I definitely see a lot of similarities between the two. Like I remember it was one of the first events I ever went to. It was the Kinsella Bullarama, where it was a PBR event in the middle of nowhere, and if you sneezed, you'd miss this little town. But it was very like once everything started, and there was like you had the beer tents and you had all the stuff. It's like this is minor league baseball, man. Like it's the same. It's the same thing. So and the guys are getting ready in the dirt, and like it's very, very similar. So it was, I would say from a sport transfer point, it was not the same, but from like an environment standpoint and that type of thing, it wasn't that hard for me, I would say, just because it's like, okay, I've already dealt with this to some degree and have a little bit of background of, yeah, you're in a shitty situation, but how do we make the best of it? Right. So
yeah. Did that make the transition kind of easy for you? Yeah, I'm sure you probably still work with baseball players too, but like, that's what, I noticed the similarities between at least the competition schedule between baseball and rodeo. And baseball, like personally, is like one of my least favorite sports, no offense, but I had to really start diving into like, okay, like how do these guys manage this? Because even though the demands of the sport are very different, the schedule is very much similar.
Yeah.
And so like, did that help the transition for you?
For sure, because it's at the end of the day, they're performing each and every day, and it's not like in baseball, you don't just show up at 6 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game, right? Like if you're at home, you're like, I'd get to the park at 10 a.m. Right, for a 7 o'clock game. Like the players would start showing up probably around noon, 1 o'clock, because they'd get on the field, they'd have whatever individual skill work they would have. There'd probably be a team defense of something that day. You would take batting practice and you would get off the field. So like basically you would have a practice before the game pretty much every single day, right? So being able to kind of try to facilitate that especially from our side, it's no different than I tell a ton of the rodeo guys is like, hey, let's look at your entire schedule. When are you getting on? Where are your days off? And how can we figure this out to where you can actually get your lifts in, right? Because especially if you're on the road and you'd have one gym bus, right, in the minor leagues, and you'd have to get all your lifts in and all that stuff. Like you'd still have to do stuff at the park. So like, I think changing that mindset of rodeo guys that like, just because you're not going to the gym, that doesn't mean you're not getting a lift in, right? So I'll have this conversation with a lot of guys right at the start of the season. We'll try to look at their schedules and kind of be like, okay, well, you can probably get 2 lifts in a week, which I'm pretty good with. But as you start to get busier, that's not going to happen. And it's not the end of the world, right? Like an ideal situation, yeah, we'll get 2 total body lifts in a week just to maintain what we've been doing. But I think it's a lot easier to look at it on a month by month basis. So, okay, we want you to get 8 lifts in a month. That doesn't mean you need to get 2 a week. You might be able to get 1 this week. You might be able to get 3 next week. But at the same time, if you're getting on 7 times, well, guess what? You have to warm up 7 times, right? So then it's taking that stuff, and I think that's the biggest kind of educational piece is just because it's a warm up, don't treat it any differently. If it's 1 set, it's a warm up. If it's 3 sets, well, fuck, that's a workout, right? Like, so trying to change that and kind of show them how that would kind of tally up and be like, okay, you still got your 8 lifts this week, and that's what we're looking for. Is it traditional of Tuesday and Thursday every week? No, but you're still getting the work done. And I think that's probably the biggest change that I've seen over the last couple of years is guys are starting to feel better later into the year just from the consistency of it, right? They're just like, I'm just not getting quite as sore. Like I'm getting on, I'm normally going to be sore. I'm like riding soreness is what it is. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But I think a lot of guys are just saying, I'm not getting quite as sore. I'm able to recover a little bit better. And it's just from the consistency of doing their correctives, doing their warm up, doing all the stuff that we're trying to get them to do.
Do you ever deal with them? This is coming from personal experience, but especially with these more elite, I don't want to say older guys, but I guess for their sport, they are older, if you will. Yeah. They get into this good groove of training, right? And they start feeling good. And then they just stop doing those things for a bit. And they kind of revert back to like, man, I'm hurting again. This is bugging me. And they come to you and say, what's going on? It's like, well, you've stopped doing the things that got you to where you're feeling good. And I think that, it's not said enough that you have to continue doing those little things. And I love that you said, in baseball, those little things, they're just part of the deal. Like those shoulder exercises, all the stabilization, like that is part of the working out for baseball. And that is part of the working out and exercise for rodeo athletes as well. It's just that pride thing, or that, this isn't too exciting enough for me or whatever. And everything you just said, like, we're not trying to recreate the excitement in the gym that you do in the arena. Like it's totally different things, right? We're trying to stabilize, strengthen all of the areas that you were going to use in your skill specific event, whatever that is.
Yeah. I would say it takes those older guys definitely a little bit more time, where they'll have one good year where they do put a lot of work in the off season, and then they'll probably get to like June, give or take, and then it gets busy. And you get into Cowboy Christmas, and then it's like, okay, I don't have a whole lot of time, and then everything kind of starts to fall off, and things happen, and then it's usually the following year when they're like, hey, I really think I need to step on this. How do we figure this out for the rest of the year? And then usually that's when we kind of bust out the schedule and be like, hey, what can we do? How can we can set your lifts up today if you want, right? Because you guys, the nice thing is, for the most part about rodeo, depending on travel and whatnot, you can kind of look at your month and say, okay, I know I'm going to get on here, and here. I might have 2 or 3 days here. Let's stick a lift in. And it may change, right? You have to be able to adjust. But I think you can basically plan out your whole year, give or take, of just where can I get that work in, and where am I going to have to kind of do some stuff where it's not going to be ideal, but I still need to get that stuff done.
Man, so everything you're talking about that's quote unquote professional, and that's part of this part of the thing that we're missing, and guys don't realize is like it does take this planning and this forward thinking about, I'm not going to be able to think about this in the middle of the season. I need to have this etched out and in the routine today. Yeah. And I already know what it's going to look like through December, quote unquote, minus some things that I have to adjust for whatever reasons. Yeah. It's going that extra step is what athletes, especially really need in our sport, need to start doing, and treating it like a job and a business. And, a lot of our schools and development camps that we're doing, everything is about a business. And, when guys start thinking about that, that's when we start seeing the big aha moments or the big jumps in their performance. And it's because they start combining all of the things they need to do. And, you're talking about the money involved in baseball and football. So I think it's easier for those guys to stay focused in those minor league situations or those B league situations, yeah, you would think, right? And again, it's still young men that we're dealing with. Right. Like, it's just part of the deal. We're immature, and that's how it rolls. So it's kind of knowing that and saying like, okay, I'm a 22-year-old, 21, 20-year-old guy or girl that wants to be a professional at it and make a living and not have to go work. And this is what I want to do. You're going to have to buckle up and kind of mature a little bit more faster than you want to.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is trying to convince a lot of them to invest in themselves a little bit more, where maybe not as much with the rough stock guys. Because
so like what?
I would say a lot of the steer wrestlers, team ropers, all that stuff, like they'll go drop $15,000 on a horse, or they'll go to the vet and drop $1,500 and not think two things about it. Yeah. Then you say, oh yeah, well this supplement costs this much and training costs this much. You're like, oof, I don't know about that. It's like, dude, like you gotta invest in yourself as well. So that's one thing. It's tough, right? Because you got the older guys that have been doing this a little bit longer, going back to the rough stock guys. It helps when you have the sponsorships. It helps those other things where it gives you the ability to not have to get on all the time, right? So, but you got these younger kids that are trying to make their name and trying to get their card or whatever they're doing. They legit have to get on, because they're not. If they don't get on, they're not making money, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to try to find that balance between where it's pretty easy when you're a guy like Zeke Thurston and you can just kind of go to the rodeos and win all of them and things are good, right? But if you're brand new into it and you've got to kind of make a name for yourself, like you need to go to all the shitty little ones and make a name for yourself and make some money and stuff. So it's a hard line to walk, I think, for the younger kids, just because there is not a whole lot of money going around. But you got to kind of just think of it more of an investment and be like, hey, if my body can do what I want it to do, then I can make more money. It's just having that trust piece to it. So
that's a really good point, Mike. And I always think of Josh Frost in this scenario, because when Josh told me how much he invests in himself throughout the year, I'm like, holy crap, dude.
Absolutely.
That's insane. It's more than what most people make in a year, but it pays him almost 10 times on, like, he gets a 10x return on his investment every year. So what would be like the low-hanging fruit, in your opinion, for guys like that aren't at that level yet? Like, what's the first thing that they should invest in?
Some bands that they can throw in their damn bag. Like just the easy stuff that's low cost, high reward, right? The stuff that doesn't cost a whole lot of money. Pretty much everything we give guys can be done in 1 yard by 1 yard square areas, right? So it's not as if they need a whole lot. And that's one of the things we do when we're trying to make programs for guys is like, hey, go home and send me a picture of your gym. And fuck, I've got pictures of a ball and a dumbbell. Like, perfect. Okay. But you make it work, right? There's ways to manipulate load, and there's ways to make that stuff work. So you don't need a fancy home gym. You don't need to go to LA Fitness every day or whatever to be able to get the work done. It's just a matter of kind of, I think that's probably the biggest barrier that guys go into is like, oh, well, I don't have the stuff, so or I don't have a gym, so I can't really do that type of stuff, or whatever it may be. It's just showing that there is a way to get this stuff done, and there's obviously a positive outcome to it if you do it.
Yeah, the consistency is the biggest thing, and it doesn't matter what it is. Just do something consistently.
100%.
Anything.
That's
anything.
And we'll have some of those days, like, and that comes right back from baseball too, where it's like, I'm kind of feeling like crap today. I'm sore. I've played 8 days in a row. It's like, just come into the gym, just do something. I don't care. Roll around, move around, because usually when you start moving, then you start moving a little bit more, right? Yep. So it's just kind of dragging your ass in there for the first time or to begin with, and just do something, move around, because doing nothing is the worst thing you can do, right? Especially once you start feeling like shit, start getting sore up, and
it's such a backwards thing, because in your brain you're like, I'm going to stay right here and not move because I am sore.
Exactly.
And we actually need to go move, and you'll feel way better if you went and moved.
Yeah.
And people get stuck in that it's like a vicious cycle of I'm sore, I'm not going, I'm hurt, I'm not going. But if you just went, you would not be hurt or be sore.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's just 10 years later, and then they haven't gone or done anything, and here we are, right?
Yeah.
Damn, I have to say something. I can't remember. Go ahead, Logan.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I have so many questions. But if I ask them all, nobody would listen to this podcast, because I want to chase some serious rabbits with somebody that has been in the industry much longer than me and understands much more. But I'm going to start with this one. So one of my biggest questions, I have an idea, but I want somebody that's been in the industry for a long time. Priorities in the summertime. Athlete in the summertime, what are your priorities for them while they're going to 4 to 6 rodeos a week? How do we, what are your, as you're programming, a mobility set, what are your priorities for your athletes in that July, August, September?
I think you're the best that you can. You're trying to not lose anything that you've built. So ideally you've put in some work in the off season when you're able to kind of beat yourself up in the gym a little bit because you're not getting on all the time. And obviously those things kind of have to work in opposites. You can't light the candle at both ends, because either way of it, right? So, but I think it's maintaining your mobility, because that's, if you're sore, we're going to be one of the first things to go. It's going to be maintaining the end range flexibility and stability at those end ranges, because as soon as you start getting sore, everything's going to start to feel tight, and you're not going to be able to kind of perform at those end ranges, which, I mean, especially in rough stock, you're getting into some pretty fucked up positions, right? Where you have to have kind of been there before to a degree. A lot of it's just honestly strength and mobility, if you can do it, right? Like shoulders, hips, groins. I mean, and the funny thing, groins is they just don't activate their ass enough most of the time. I mean, especially everything's just falling inwards, and it gets overworked. And it's funny, we'll get guys to come in, oh, I'm so sore, my groins are tight, blah blah, and I won't touch their groins. I'll just be like, okay, let's do some glute activation stuff. I'll do a lot of like manual stuff with them where it kind of blows them up a little bit. I'm like, okay, go get loose again. And like, oh, my groins are looser. I was like, well, I didn't touch your damn groins. So that should, sometimes light bulbs start to go off a little bit there. And I think stuff like that can help with a lot. Like a good example of that, we had a saddle bronc kid come in, and he I had him jump on the force plates, and we got whatever his vertical was and peak power. And I was like, hey, let's go get loose. Went through some form running, did some plyos, did some stuff like that, and then threw him back on the force plates. And everything went up like 30%, right? And he was like, holy shit. I'm like, well, that's why you fucking warm up.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like just
That's it.
And sometimes you just need something that black and white and
It's so nice that you guys have that.
Some type of objective measure to show like, okay, this is you if you don't do shit. This is you if you warm up. And it's something as simple as that, where then I think that kind of creates that buy-in, right? And I think kind of like going back to your question, Logan, like if they've bought into all that stuff, just the consistency of the mobility, the strengthening, the kind of trying to just give them what they're not getting, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, in September, August, September, we're not going to hammer on groin strength, right? Like you're good, right? Let's just get the stuff that they're not getting, because it's no different than baseball. Like we'll do a little bit of a pretty high level of rotational stuff in the off season, but in season, fuckers are taking 500 swings a day. Like I don't need to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't make any sense. So let's do the stuff that you're not getting. Let's work on some stability. Let's rotate the other direction, because I know you're not getting that. So it's just stuff like that to try to balance them out the best you can. And like, you're not going to be balanced out. Like no different than baseball. It's a unilateral sport. Like there's a reason guys are as good as they are, is because they have these imbalances. Right. And like no different than, especially the rough stock guys, like it's basically a unilateral sport. So I really don't give a shit if you can get your riding get your riding arm above your head all the way. Like ideally, in perfect situation, great. But I mean,
you're not going to nerd out on getting them even in you're not going to waste time in the wintertime trying to go like, oh, well, I see some imbalances here we've got to cure. It's like, no, the low-hanging fruit is that you weigh 170 pounds and you can only back squat 135 pounds. That's probably like a priority at this point.
Especially for those younger kids, just get stronger, right?
Yeah.
Because if get stronger, put some more muscle on. I think that's one of the things that we've seen a little bit is guys are getting a little bit less afraid to put on some muscle and get a little bit bigger, right? Where it was, Leanne will say it all the time, like Cowboys, they don't want to have an ass. I'm like, well,
none.
Like then why wear a belt? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
So, but I think that's changing a little bit, where guys are okay putting on 10 more pounds, because at the end of the day, like you're not wearing equipment. So when you hit the ground, it's going to hurt. So let's give yourself a little bit of more robustness. Let's give yourself a little bit of armor, to when that does happen, you may still injure yourself, and that's fine. But
that's rodeo.
It may not be dislocation. It may just be subluxation and goes back in, and then you're back in a week, right? Rather than, okay, now I need surgery, I'm up for 6 months. Yeah. Right. So I try to
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That 10 pounds that you gained isn't enough. That's what a lot of those bull riders are concerned with. They're concerned with not being, light on the back of the bull or feeling. And I'm like, man, that 10 pounds is not going to slow you down. If anything, it's just going to make you more explosive, more powerful on the back of the animal, as well as, like you said, more durable. So like, that's what we preach to all our athletes is like, hey, 135 and 5'10" ain't doing it for you, big dog. No. Like that ain't where we need to be.
No. They don't understand the trade-offs. You trade off so much strength and power when we take away that weight, and you really don't take away anything from your performance levels when you increase your performance of power and strength by 10 pounds. Like, dude, you're not taking 10 pounds off of T-bars and weighing it off you, and you're like this. Like, it's on you, and it's wild. But it's one of those things that we've had to transition. We've had to change the culture. We had so many of those old rodeo athletes like, oh, you just need to be light. You need to be light as possible. That's the only thing that's ever going to work. It's bullshit.
Light and weak.
Yeah. Right. And that's why we just see guys break. And you're talking about, the durability is the biggest thing. And you're going to get hurt in rodeo.
Them,
that's part of it.
Look at running backs right? Like they're not small. Like if you watch any of the combine, it's like, holy shit. But they have to be fast, they have to be powerful, and they have to take hits. Well, like what's the difference? Obviously, we don't need guys that muscled up to some degree, but at the same time, like it's not going to hurt you to add some.
The look should be similar, especially in like the bareback riding, the rough stock events, steer wrestlers. Like you guys, even the big guys, like you should look like that. Like you should look strong. And when I want to go back to the timed event stuff, because you touched on that, they'll dump all this money into supplements, their horses, they'll get their horses adjusted every day. Like all this stuff that you mentioned, God forbid, $300 for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
To feel better, to be healthier, all of these things. and they're freaked. They're like, absolutely not, can't do that, too expensive. And when in an event that is timed and decided by hundredths of a second, if you think that your positioning on that horse doesn't affect that timing, you're fucking dumb.
Exactly.
Like, you are not smart. You need to rethink your entire thing, because that's like physics. The animal cannot run or turn as fast as it needs to. Let's talk about barrel racing. Like, that's exhibit A, man. Like, if some of those girls would invest just not even a quarter, like a tenth of what they put into those horses every year into themselves, they would be unstoppable. Haley Kinsel, she doesn't talk about all the things she does. She probably doesn't go train like exercise wise, but she is very active. She's doing ranch work. She's riding those horses every day. She's like there is a trade-off, right? If you're doing ranch work and you hire me to train you, we're not going to go hit the gym every day. We're not going to go resistance train every day, because you're doing that in everyday life. Right. And so it's just this whole, we got to change the outlook on it, right? The culture of timed events, especially. But I love hearing another person besides us three say the same thing that we say all the time.
It's 100% true. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, saddle bronc and bareback, I think, are probably better examples, but those guys are getting a lot bigger too. Like we train Cody Lamb.
Yo, dude, guy's a freaking monster.
Absolute monster. And it took him a while too. Because like it was like, no, I like to be in that kind of like, I mean, he's a big.
No, he was like Bennett. Him and they were the exact same.
Like it's like, oh, I like to be in that like 180, 185 range. I'm like, dude, that's not it. Like, and it kind of happened, I wouldn't say by accident, but just because he's been very consistent with his training, probably up to like 195 now. And, but there's not an ounce of fat on the dude. So it's like,
and he didn't just go to that overnight. Like, you guys have been training together for years. This took years to put on that weight, 15 pounds, from where he started to where he is now. And I will say, watching him ride, he finished rides stronger. He's riding better than he ever has. He's older than he was. So that's an anomaly. You're getting better as you're getting older. That doesn't happen. So it works. The proof is in the pudding there. But yeah, I wouldn't ever want to let him get a hand on me.
No, he's he's fun in the gym. I'll say that. Like, he's fun.
Have you? I'm kind of bouncing all over the place because I wrote some things down as we've been talking. I want to talk about. I did competitive CrossFit for a long time. I definitely don't think CrossFit is the best source of exercise for, honestly, like really nobody, unless you want to specialize in the sport. Unless you want to like do, because like we were talking about, the lifts, everything, the volume, it's insane. And with that has to come all the recovery work. And so my job was exercise. We would lift, condition, do all these things. That was 3 hours a day. 2 additional hours was my recovery, my ROM WOD, I worked with Kelly Starrett a bunch. I don't know if you know who he is. He's out in California.
Stop a leopard.
Yeah, exactly. Did all of his stuff, but it was every day. And I felt great. It was awesome, but it was my entire life. I forget who told me this. It was one of the guys on my teams, but he played Division I football. He was an athlete, trained all the time. And I was like, man, I just don't feel good majority of the time, in the gym. And he's like, dude, like, when you get to this and this is your job and training, like, you're going to feel good those days where you're like, fuck yeah, like 40 to 50, 40% of the time, like 50, you're like, 1 out of 2 is a lot. He's like, so you got to find the way, like, and what goes back to what you're saying, just getting moving, addressing the workout in a different way. Just because you're not, when we were in those days, I was snatching, clean and jerks, heavy squats, all the pulling 500 off the floor all the time. But it was like, dude, that's not gonna. You can't do that all the time. You have to moderate it. And then those days you don't feel good, take the intensity down. Like, learn how to your body, like self-awareness, essentially figure out what your body is telling you and how to adjust the gym in that day. And then when you do feel good, crush it those days. Like, use those days to the utmost of my ability. But I was like, I was thinking earlier when you were talking about some things about like guys get sore and they don't want to move and they need to go move. It's, if you're a professional athlete, dude, this is part of it. You're not going to feel good 100% of the time, no matter what supplement you take, no matter what. You could run a steroid cycle and you're still not going to feel good 100% of the time. Like there is no secret pill for that.
It's one of those things we try and tell guys is you got to use your warm up as basically a full body scan each day, right? And if you're not doing the same warm up every day, you never know, right? So a lot of it is trying to get ahead of stuff, being not reactionary to everything, because, and that's one thing we try and preach, is like, try to make your warm up, as far as like your dynamic movements or whatever that is, the same every single day, just so you know, right? If I do something different every day and I didn't actually check if how my hamstrings felt that day, and maybe they were tight, then you get on and pop one, well, it's like, okay, now you're out for 6 to 8 weeks, right? Whereas if I go through the same warm up every day, get the same routine, it's like, oh, my shit's pretty tight today. Well, guess what? Go to Sport Med, get ahead of it, see if you can get some work done, see if you can get it, maybe wrap it that day, but just getting ahead of all that stuff and kind of knowing how you're feeling before getting on and being able to address it. And I think it's one of the other big conversations we have is, this thing's a marathon, not a sprint. And obviously there's certain events that you're probably going to ride if you're even hurt, injured, not hurt, which is two different things. That comes from the hockey world.
Oh, no, so we're all about it too, bro.
Right?
Are you injured? Are you
Hurt or
hurt?
injured?
Yeah. But if it's kind of sometimes being like, is it okay if you turn out this weekend knowing that you probably just need 3 or 4 days, everything will feel better and you'll be good in 2 weeks? Or do you push through it, blow it up, and then now you're out for 2 months, right? So you got to kind of weigh those differences. So I think that's
Business
one of the bigger
decisions.
things, right? Because if you're not riding, you're not getting paid, which I get. But at the same time, if you're not riding for 2 months, you're really not getting paid, right?
There's times a year to push through that. You're on the bubble. It's September 29th, and you're at the last one. You got to go. You got to go get on and make it
Let
work.
it go. Right.
It's right now. Yeah, and let's take the break if we're going through this in March or April.
Well,
or even
if you can't do your job, then it's just irresponsible.
Right.
If you've got some sort of groin issue or a hamstring issue or something where you're struggling to even mark a horse out, you're just wasting your time at that point in time. You're not gonna there's no way you're gonna win any money anyway.
And putting yourself at risk for no reason.
You're exactly right.
Hui has the best gear because it's tough, it's durable, it withstands the test of what we put it through, and that is why I am a big supporter of Hui brands. Guys, from hats, apparel, whatever you need, they've got you covered. They are the perfect blend of rodeo style and athletic performance. You can check them out at huibrands.com. Use our discount code ChampionLiving, all one word, is going to save you a little bit at checkout. Hey, you mentioned, I love this, like doing the same warm-up, a full body scan every day. Dude, I'm sure you have dealt with this, but I get so much flack from some clients about repeating the same things over and over. Like they get bored or whatever. And it, to me as coaches, like we know that, well, first of all, that full body scan to me is, you're warming up, but the whole, it's not to entertain you. It's to see what the body is doing and get the feedback from your body about like, where are we at?
Yeah.
You can't get that feedback if you don't repeat the same thing. In the same sense, and especially with our strength work, and I know Logan deals with this too, Paul, like we'll back squat and we'll back squat for like 8 weeks. And they're like, well, can we do something different? Like, but that's not the point, dude. Like we're trying to increase your strength through these things that like through the volume, the loads, all the rest times, like it's all set up for a reason, not to necessarily entertain you. And I think it's a mindset shift from the athlete's perspective of, again, this is my job. Sometimes jobs aren't fun. They aren't the most entertaining, but I tell you what, it's way better than any other job. Like going to sit at a desk. All you got to do is go do the exercises like they're written and just not care about being entertained. So like, what do you do for that? Or how do you deal with that?
That's definitely like a conversation we have when we're first starting a program for guys. It's like, don't expect new shit every 6 weeks, right? Like, and it's one of those things where if you did do that, if you gave somebody new stuff every 6 weeks, and don't get me wrong, I could easily do that. But that whole first week, they're spending half the damn time looking at their phone, being like, hey, what exercise is this? And the workout takes them an hour and a half. And I preface that with when we first started training with guys, like, hey, this first week's going to take you a long time to do because you're going to be looking at your phone. You're going to be thinking, how many sets, reps? How do I do this exercise? And then by the time they get to week 3, 4, 5, they can usually rip through it in 45 minutes and under an hour. And I try to say, like, I don't want you guys in there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, less than an hour in and out, you should be able to do everything. And then that's usually what that first phase. And the second one, I'm like, I'm not giving you a bunch of new stuff. We're going to stay with the same things. We're just going to change different variations of the same thing. So whether it be core stability or whatever it is, we'll go from half kneeling position to a tall kneeling position to a split stance to standing to dynamic. And well, shit, there's 6 months of programming right there. Just progressing some of the exercise. And the only thing that's different is you're changing where your feet are, right? No different than you can do it with squats, deadlifts, whatever it is. You change the intensity, you change the load. And I think once in a while you got to throw them a cookie here and there and be like, oh, you're gonna do a complex, or you're gonna be able to jump after you squat or whatever it is. And like, oh fuck, cool. Like, but I think a lot of it is kind of prefacing everything, like, don't expect this to be P90X and muscle confusion, because that shit ain't it, right? So
that's another great term I'm going to use. Muscle confusion is great.
It's not exactly not a thing, right? And I think going on the other side of that to some degree is, don't ever try and periodize a program for these guys, because it doesn't make any damn sense.
Doesn't work. We learned that years ago.
You bang your head against the wall, right? You spend 3 hours programming. Oh, this program's fucking perfect. Yeah. And then it goes to shit after 2 weeks, right? Because
or less.
Right. So, I mean, we tried it in baseball. It just doesn't work. There's too much sport volume and too many other factors that it doesn't play like that. So, I mean, a lot of the guys, especially as we're starting to get to in season, and we may only see guys in the gym maybe once a week, whatever it is, we do a lot. Like Leanne and I do this all the time. We just call it like a treat and train, right? So they'll come see her for an hour. They'll see what's wrong with them, get some tissue work, get stuff done, and then they follow it up with training. And I mean, the way our gym's set up, there's a garage door in between the training room and the weight room. So they basically walk over and be like, "Hey, what do we got today?" And I don't think the workouts ever look the same, right? Because it's something's going to be a little bit sore. We're going to work around something, or it's like, "Hey, he's pretty tight in his T-spine today. Let's do a little bit of extra stuff there." It's funny when you get, like, we have 2 practicum students that usually stay with us every kind of semester or whatever it is, and especially when I'm working with like rehab guys or rodeo guys, they're like, "You don't have a piece of paper or anything with you?" Like, nope. Like, I know I have a general blueprint in my head of what I want to do that day, and then we'll figure it out after that. We always get it. We always get the movements done, but if I planned on squatting that day, we planned on doing Zerchers or something like that, and I was like, well, his shoulder hurts. Like, okay, we're not going to do that today. Then we'll belt squat, right? So you have to be able to make those adjustments, and some of that just comes with coaching for a long time and being able to have 10 variations of the same exercise in your head, where these students are like, what? Like, how is that even a thing? But like, it's just being in it long enough that, and it's probably not a whole lot different than when you get guys on the road and you don't see them in person. It's like, hey, this is sore, okay, and then the changes you make on their programs to be like, hey, how does that feel, right? As shitty as COVID was, I think it made us a lot better as coaches, being able to watch video and be like, okay, that looks like shit. Try this for a change. Make these variation changes, and you should usually get what you want to get done without completely kiboshing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So
it is. Fitness has so much gray area. Everyone thinks it's this black and white thing where it's like you do this and this and that's it. Actually, no, majority, like 98% is gray. Like, there's these foundations, yes, but everything else in between is, especially with rodeo, like we're among the first people, like right here, 4 of us, like to do this in this industry. So there are no rules. We get to make our own rules. And like the periodization is really tough. It gets a little bit easier with our more elite athletes that actually can program or not or schedule out their rodeos a little. Right. They're going 100%. To the big indoor rodeos right now, and that's it. They're going. Yeah. They don't go. They got April off, and they're starting in May again. And then exactly. So sometimes we can do that, but everyone else, we're going. Like it's wintertime. We're going.
You can kind of do it basically from the time NFR ends till you're probably right, like May. Like you have probably about like 5 months where you can pretty much get what you need to get done, and you can kind of periodize it through there to some degree. But then after that, you're just trying to maintain, right? You're trying to, what does this dude lack? What is he not good at? And let's make sure we continue with that stuff, right? Like if you got a big, strong guy in season, we probably don't need to work on that stuff as much, but he's probably not the quickest fella out there. So we probably need to do a little bit more plyos, a little more jumping, a little more running, stuff like that. Where I think that's one of the things that we've implemented a ton, which I think has been positive. It's been good feedback. You guys probably have the exact same thing. I want faster feet. Oh, no shit. No shit. Like,
yeah.
But how do you train that?
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yep.
not the easiest thing in the world when you're floating and trying to train your feet. So one thing we've done, I've got a pretty decent sprint background and just from doing rehab stuff and hamstring. So we've actually implemented a ton of form running with guys. So A skips, B skips.
Yep.
We're doing
a lot of this stuff with Cody Lamb. We're doing a spur skip. So basically going laterally and spurring into the ground. Like,
yeah,
it's just stuff like, who has the fastest feet in the world? Well, sprinters do.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get them faster, but actually be able to move your body in space, right? Like without trying to make it too centralized to exactly like the sport. You know what I'm saying? Where like in baseball, you don't see guys tying bands to their bat and swinging them, right? Like that's not going to make you faster. Globally, more strength and speed is going to make that a better thing.
Yes.
So just getting guys more athletic, getting them jumping, getting them and doing a ton of that stuff, I think has been a huge help to these guys. And then the other thing was a lot of the bull riders were saying they just feel like when they get bucked off, they can get the fuck out of the way a lot faster. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be crawling, however it may be, like, and then it becomes like you're looking for life support there. So just being able to land on one foot and feel okay about that. Like, you like to put them in situations that they're going to potentially be in. And we always say, like, I can't bring a horse or a bull in the gym, but we can kind of say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen, and how can we try and prevent that the best that we can? So try to do some of that stuff, and that's been a pretty positive thing.
Are you familiar with there's a guy on Instagram, his name's Matt Watson, I think, and he's got a Plus Plyos program. He's supposedly like a Plyos guy. I listened to a couple podcasts with him, and after listening to the podcast and just the effects on tendon length and tension and stiffness and whatnot from Plyos, just getting a basic understanding of Plyos and what Plyos really are, right? Yep. Because, we think, if you don't know any better, it's like, oh, it's just box jumps, or, and it's like, man, there's just so much good stuff. And so I started diving into that, like I call it general athleticism, and whether it's just different, and man, it is no face value whatsoever for the athlete. They look at it and they're like, bro, what? And I'm like, just trust me. And I seem to get really good results, but I wanted to with the plyos and whatnot, that whole face value idea, right? Do you struggle with or see, or maybe your ideology? I see quite a few guys that are, like we've alluded to on this podcast already, replicating the arena in the gym with bands and dumbbells and kettlebells here and lifting here. And what my personal, I have, obviously none of us have probably any research to go off of. My personal opinion in that is that when you start bringing the sport into the gym, we're going to end up getting some faulty biomechanics that are not going to apply well to the sport. And so if we'll just keep the gym and the sport, they need to take the tools we give them in the weight room and apply them on the spur board or on the barrel or something like that. But do you guys see that? You talked about a spur skip. So there's some there that's probably official. Where's the line, or how do you guys determine that?
I would say that when you look at transferability, I think is probably the term for it is, and you're 100% right with just that general athleticism stuff. Like, we start our plyometric program, phase 1, it's not even plyometrics. Legitimately, it's single leg hops to stick. Now stick that landing, be stable. Once we can do that, then we'll get to a double hop. Once we get to that, then we'll get into more legit plyometrics where it's continuous and whatnot. And then we'll get into absorbing force and all those other type of things. That's when guys start to feel like, okay, I actually feel a little bit better. And it's nice when you get guys in person to be able to do that for kind of multiple months in a row. Because then you kind of go, when you get into those continuous hops or continuous leaps or whatever you're doing, you're like, now imagine if we would have started this day one. Right, you have no idea how to accept force. No idea how to accelerate. No idea to stabilize your knee, your hip, anything like that. Then the kind of light bulb goes off. Like, okay, I need to be able to do these things in order to do, I just say, the fun stuff, right? To be able to do all these multiple hurdle jumps and all these other things. so that's been super positive. I think we've seen a lot of positive stuff when it comes to, I mean, it seems like everybody has some type of knee injury to some degree. But it's no different than if I get an ACL, we're doing the same shit, right? Mm-hmm. Where we need to be able to stabilize the knee, be able to do all those things. And we're still lifting and doing box jumps and doing those other things at the same time. But I think going through a lot of that stuff first has helped a lot of those kind of cranky knees and whatnot, because you're having to stabilize, you're learning how to stabilize correctly, using your hip and not just throwing everything directly anteriorly into your knee. So that from the plyometrics side, I think we're exactly on the same page. And I think as far as transferability goes, I think it's probably more the older, more experienced guys where it's like, hey, this is what I'm feeling in my riding. I'm getting a little bit too extended, or I'm getting whatever it may be. Then I think we can probably work on little things like that, where it's like, okay, let's get you into a shitty position and let's get you back out of it. And work some strength there. But it's very, very small, I would say.
But like to your point, like they've got to earn that, right?
100%.
Levels.
Yeah. Young kids, you just need to get stronger and better with it. Because I would imagine,
I feel like I have this conversation every day.
The riding form is not mechanically perfect like a lot of these older, more experienced guys are, where they're just looking for little changes here and there, right? Like they're looking for that attention to detail, where that can be the difference, right? Being difference between 89.5 and 91. Well, that's a lot of money, right? And the kids that are asking about to do all these other things, well, you're not anywhere near that, right? We just need you to get the basics down, and you probably do got to get your ass on the spur board and get a hell of a lot better at your sport and your skill first. Then we can worry about kind of getting those things together down the line. But right now, you just need to get stronger and more stable for the most part.
Yeah. We see guys, but they just don't know, and they think, fitness is things you just go do that thing that you're seeing on Instagram or whatever. But you get it all the time. Like, I want to be more powerful. I need to be more explosive. It's like, cool. Well, you have to be strong in order to have power. So we actually need to get your strength up before we can even address any kind of power, anything.
Yeah.
And, that's where the boat's missed. Guys go try and do this on their own, and they really just dig themselves a hole eventually. In the beginning, sure, anyone's going to get better at something if they've never done anything. You're going to see some kind of positive results.
CNS that's just on fire.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
I wish I was 16 again.
Dude. Me too. Me too, man. It'd be stupid. We'd be the strongest dudes out there for sure. But we just missed that, and we just want to jump to this, sexy type looking thing that all the elite guys are doing. That's just not how it works. There's levels of anything. If you are just a beginning level rodeo athlete, bull rider, you're not going to go get on your first bull to PBR. It's not a good idea, right?
No.
But in all reality, that's a pretty comparable thing. Like if you're not going to load up the barbell with 225 if you've never done a back squat in your life. Like that's stupid.
Exactly.
You've got to start small. And I think the problem we run into, especially with rodeo athletes, is we all have a little bit of an ego and a little bit of pride. And so stooping down or going down to these beginner levels doesn't always feel good, but it's those guys that can put that to the side and be coachable and do the thing they actually need to, regardless of how it makes them feel, pride wise.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden they're going to be exactly where they wanted to be in half the time that it took this other person who is not willing to change or thinks they can do better themselves. Paul was talking on our last episode about, he always gets to this point where he's like, I know I need to invest in something for myself, but I wait till I'm fucking broke and then I do it. He's like, instead I should be doing it when I know this is going to help me. And so he's like, why do I make myself get to there? Because I've been learning and like learning from those experiences, and I'm not doing that anymore. I'm realizing I need to get with this coach now to stay ahead of this. It's the same thing, guys. If you invested $300 a month, that's a little over $3,000 a year. If you're not winning over $3,000 more a year by doing this stuff, you got the wrong coach. You know what I mean? I will almost guarantee, like 100% guarantee, if you are 90% consistent with a program 3 days a week for an entire year, you are going to, it'll be dumb how much money you win and compared to what you invest.
Just for the simple fact, you're going to be able to get on more.
Yeah.
You're healthier. You know what I mean? Just you're going to be able to accept more volume and enter more rodeos because you feel better.
That's exactly right. That's what I tell guys. We don't make you a better bareback rider. I increase your capacity for bareback riding is what we do, right? Like you want to be a better bareback rider, go to a school, right? Yeah. But you want a bit more capacity. That's what we can do in in the weight room.
Yeah, and at the end 100%. Of the day, like, we're gambling. You need to be available, able to compete long enough for those good opportunity draws to take advantage of them. If you're hurt all the time and you go get on a piece of junk, you get hurt, you had 2 good ones drawn the next 2 days, you can't get on them because you haven't prepared. Well, you just screwed yourself out of a ton of money. It's like, it's those times where
there's a good saying. It's like, what's the best ability is availability. Right.
That's it.
It's if you're able, like you said, if you're able to get on more, there's a good chance you're going to win more. Like, just at the end of the day, your percentages are going to be higher. Right.
Yep. Absolutely. And if you're getting on and feeling good, you're only going to increase that success rate, and that confidence goes so far. And that's another thing that's like a byproduct, a side effect of exercise and fitness, is you get more confident in your abilities, and it just happens. You don't even have to try. You start training more, you show up more confident and ready to roll.
Those guys that come in knowing that they've put in the work, and I think there's definitely a confidence there where, like, I'm strong, I'm fit, I'm mobile, I feel really good. Like, at the end of the day, like, in a sport that's very subjective, obviously, but if you feel good and you throw a little flair in there, well, you're going to might get yourself a couple extra points here and there as well, right? Instead of being like, oh, I don't feel great, I'm a little more timid, a little stiff. Well, then you're kind of sewering yourself already, right? So,
yeah. And in a game that is 90% between your ears, that matters.
That's that confidence is huge.
Yep, they correlate. Right? Yeah,
big time.
Yeah, man. Dude, thanks so much for coming on today. We're right at an hour. I have this notebook. I have so much more I want to talk about.
I'm like, could we just do like a Joe Rogan one time, please? Like,
I got 3-hour piece
I'd like to ask. I've got so many questions.
Yeah, seriously though, this has been really awesome, and we loved having you on, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
We had Leanne on a, man, it feels like forever ago, but it's always so nice to have coaches on that. We don't work together. We aren't in the same place, but we all have the same vision and we're doing the same things. And so It's like, in the beginning, I used to get almost fearful about who someone was training with, and not to throw shade at people, but it's like, you know how, like, some of those people, you're like, dude, what? Get off that stability ball. Why are you holding a weight and jumping on that ball? That's terrible. It's because we care. All of us care. But like, I would feel bad when someone was training with a coach that was not setting them up to succeed, because that person didn't know any better. They were looking for help and weren't getting it. Nowadays, it's like, there's so many good coaches out there and so many people that are doing the same things, and we can all align on the same, like, methods ish, and push the whole sport together forward, which is what we're all about, man. Like, that's the whole reason we started this, is to change the culture of rodeo. And
we recommend you. We recommend you guys all the time. Like, literally, it's like, hey, listen, this isn't a plug for us, like, because we'll talk on the podcast about hiring a coach, and it's like, it's not just necessarily a plug for us. We might not be the best fit for you, but like, I always go to Acumen and Wolf and Sons out of Texas. Like, those like the CSCS, like, intelligent programming and design, from everybody I've talked to and what I know about them. Like, there's at least 2 other places that I know you can go get quality programming and get better. So I love what you guys are doing. I mean, you're blazing the trail as far as, like, which we didn't get to dive into, but even research, which is what we so desperately need. You know, you guys are blazing a trail there, and the sport of rodeo is going to be different in 10 years from now because of the work that you guys are doing up there. And that's that's huge. That's awesome. So.
Yeah, we didn't even get to dive into.
I know. We got to do that.
I really want to get into the sports med crossover, like how the communication channel should be between training and a strength and conditioning coach.
That could be one where both Leanne and I could come on.
I was going to say we should get both of you on,
and just kind of get that, because I think that is a little bit of a unique situation, right? And I mean, that was her whole vision, I would say, is like, we're going to set this thing up like a professional organization, right? Like, she came from the university levels, I came from professional levels, and that's just the way it's done. And that's the way it's done at these levels. And I think that's the way it should be done. We both feel like that's the way it should be done, where there's no siloing of information or anything like that. It's just, you need to be able to transition back and forth. And that's one thing we do a ton at Acumen too, is like, if somebody comes in and maybe they might just be there for training, they may not be there for anything with the ATs at all, but it's like, hey, I'm kind of cranky in my hip or cranky on the hamstring. Well, we walk 15 feet, say, hey, you got time to work on his hamstring, boom, 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 come back 15 minutes later and continue our lift, right? Where it's an ideal situation, don't get me wrong, but I think it's something that like Brandon Tommy's done an outstanding job with that with the sport med team up here, as far as pushing guys to the strength side as much as possible, and vice versa, right? Like where we should be each other's biggest fans, and it's just going to help the athletes in the future, right? So it's perfect.
Yeah, we're gonna awesome. Get one day we're gonna be there. One day.
But hey, I would say with these teams things that are starting to get a little bit more momentum and whatnot, and ideally, I mean, ideal world, you'd have an ATC and a strength coach with each team, and then traveled with them and was there at the arena with them and being able to do all those things.
You got to get in front of the owners at that point. That's the hardest part, man, is these owners don't understand. It's another culture change, right? It's like the first 100%. Franchise. It's like, oh crap. And then the coaches as well. Like we've got a lot of coaches. They were outstanding bull riders and incredible cowboys and athletes, but they don't know.
They never did any of this shit.
They just ran 5 miles a day was the most working
and did 100 push-ups and 200 sit-ups and that's it.
That's all you need. That's what it's funny when the guys they're trying to emulate the 1%, which makes no sense. Like you got to look at, like obviously like JB Mooney's one, but if you go to other sports, go to LeBron, like there's some his workouts,
that's
like
what they're missing.
Like I tell people, like JB Mooney could have done cartwheels and he would have been just as good as he is.
Like it didn't matter what he did.
JB Mooney got on more bulls than anybody else. That was great.
You guys have there has to be. You're at the end of the day, you're not JB Mooney, so we need to figure something else out. If you're JB Mooney, you wouldn't be here right now. To be honest,
exactly.
You'd be somewhere else making a hell of a lot more money than in Edmonton with us at Acumen. So, just having those conversations is big. But yeah, I would definitely love to jump back on with Leanne and kind of probably dive a little more into more like the nuts and bolts of like the strength and conditioning stuff and the athletic training stuff, and that would be just and stuff that we see on both sides of things, right? We ideally, now that we've been doing this long enough, we have the one paper out, and then that's just
I want to talk about that too in the next one. It's like you guys have actually done some research and had some published things, and it's exciting, but let's save that. Let's not wait too long. I'll get a group text with all of us together, and we'll kind of do this relatively soon, because I think this would be a good follow-up.
Be a good follow for sure.
Cool. Guys, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, we will catch you later. The Rodeo Now app allows you to record, upload, and catalog your rides and runs, review your performances in slow motion, and our favorite feature, if you're not familiar with your stock draw, you can search your animal by name to get all the intel you need to make your next ride a winning one. Join the rodeo revolution today and download the Rodeo Now app for free. It's available in the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. If you want to learn more about our coaches and program options, make sure to swing over to our website at www.championlivingfitness.com. You can fill out the Become an Athlete form to set up your free consultation and have all your questions answered by a coach.